Hello and thanks for joining us for our mid-morning edition of Arirang News. I'm Mark Broom. Let's start by taking a look at the day's headlines. The Kremlin confirms North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will visit Russia this month for his first ever face-to-face with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Reports indicate the most likely venue will be in or around Vladivostok. President Moon Jae-in arrives in Uzbekistan for the second leg of his three-nation tour to Central Asia. We get the latest from our correspondent travelling with the South Korean leader. Plus, a lightly redacted Mueller report is released. President Trump hails the findings, saying it vindicates him. The Democrats say some of the findings in the report are damning. Let's start this morning, though, with a memorial ceremony commemorating the 59th anniversary of the April 19th revolution. It's just getting started at the April 19th Memorial Cemetery in Seoul. To give you some background, in 1960, thousands of demonstrators, mostly college students, took to the streets of Masan, Gyeongsang-namdo province, to rise up against Korea's then military dictatorship led by Lee Seung-man. Later on this day in 1960, police in Seoul opened fire on protesters, killing around 180 people and wounding thousands. Under the theme of democracy, the path we walk together, around 2,500 people, including the Prime Minister and the Patriots and Veterans Affairs Minister, have gathered to remember those brave spirits. At this year's ceremony, 40 honorees will receive awards for the first time in 7 years. President Moon Jae-in is now in Uzbekistan as he continues his first tour of Central Asia as South Korean leader. Our Shin Se-min, who is travelling with the president, files this report from Tashkent.
The Uzbek capital of Tashkent is stop 2 of 3 on President Moon Jae-in's first ever tour of Central Asia. During a 4-day state visit consisting of summit meetings with his Uzbek counterpart Shavkat Mirziyoyev, the presidents are likely to focus on ways to upgrade their level of political and economic ties. They will also discuss ways to expand the two sides' practical cooperation in the areas of ICT, medical, and defense technology. Uzbekistan is seen as a profitable market for South Korea, given the country's economy has been logging a steady 5% level of annual growth over the past 3 years. In particular, the two countries' healthcare-related ties are at a level not seen with Seoul's other partner nations. In fact, they are so crucial that the president's first schedule upon his arrival in Tashkent was to visit a university demonstrating a joint remote medical consultation by doctors from the two countries.
특히 이 헬스는 전 세계적으로 가장 유망한 예산 중 하나입니다. 양국이 의료 분야 4차 산업혁명에 함께 대응하는 전략적 파트너가 되길 기대합니다.
South Korea's technological know-how, such as 5G networks and AI, should help Uzbekistan's medical sector, which is hampered by the country's vast size and unique geographical features. During his stay, President Moon will also address members of Uzbekistan's parliament, a first for a visiting South Korean leader. His trip will also take him to Samarkand, one of the oldest inhabited cities in Central Asia, before wrapping up his stay in the country. The South Korean leader's trip comes 2 years after the Uzbek's president visited Seoul, and expectations for the talks are high as Uzbekistan is seen as the base to President Moon's new northern policy and is also the most populated Central Asian nation. Shin Se-min, Arirang News, Tashkent.
The first summit between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin appears to have the green light to happen in late April. This is according to reports out of Russia that cite the Kremlin itself. But the big question remains on what the two leaders will talk about during their time together. Lee Seung-jae reports.
Citing the Kremlin, Russian news service RIA Novosti says North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will visit Russia this month for talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The news service, along with other Russian news outlets, reported the North Korean leader will make the visit at Putin's invitation, as announced by Kremlin press release. However, the report did not give further details, including dates or the venue. Speculation has been rising that Kim and Putin will hold their first summit in Russia's far eastern city of Vladivostok next week, when the Russian president travels to the city on his way to China for an international conference. According to Japan's Kyodo News, citing unidentified sources, reports the North Korean leader plans to make a 3-day visit to Russia beginning next Wednesday. It added Kim plans to travel by train and hold a summit with Putin on Russky Island, an island close to Vladivostok. Russian media has also reported the eastern Russian city would be the likely venue, citing some restrictions being imposed at facilities in the city. Japan's Fuji News Network also aired footage of a man presumed to be Kim's protocol chief of staff, Kim Jong-un, checking a train station in Vladivostok. Experts say the summit will discuss trilateral cooperation between Seoul, Pyongyang, and Moscow, as well as the North lobbying for an international sanctions relief, while Russia will likely call on North Korea to freeze its nuclear weapons program. Putin has publicly supported talks between Pyongyang and Washington, but openly stated that North Korea needs to be given solid security guarantees in return for giving up its nuclear arsenal. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The U.S. Special Representative on North Korea is in Moscow for 2 days of talks. Stephen Biegun met with his Russian counterpart Igor Morgulov on Thursday to discuss bilateral relations between the two countries and efforts to achieve North Korea's denuclearization. Russia's foreign ministry said in a press release that there was a detailed exchange of views on the current situation around the Korean peninsula, adding the two sides will make active efforts through all parties to achieve a diplomatic solution. U.S. Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan confirmed that North Korea's latest inspection and test fire of a new tactical guided weapons firing test was just that, not a ballistic missile. Speaking to reporters on Thursday, Shanahan added that there was no change to the U.S. military operations or posture as a result of this test. AP reported that this marks the first time a U.S. government official has publicly confirmed North Korea's state media reports on weapons tests by the reclusive state. This comes after Pyongyang's state-run Korean Central News Agency reported Wednesday that Kim Jong-un had inspected and directed the weapons test. The day before the test, Kim reviewed an Air Force flight exercise. So the wait is finally over. The U.S. Department of Justice has released a lightly redacted version of the Mueller report. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Hong Yu. So tell us more about how this report looks and what are some of the highlights from it.
Well, Mar, the redacted version of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's nearly 400-page-long report into allegations over collusion with Russia in the lead-up to the U.S. 2016 presidential election concludes that it did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in the election interference activities. Mueller learned Trump had repeatedly asked his people to find Hillary Clinton's deleted emails, but Trump's campaign did not get in contact with Russian hackers nor obtain the deleted Clinton emails. And just like the summary of the report given by the Attorney General William Barr, Mueller offered no definitive conclusion on whether President Trump obstructed justice during the course of his investigation. The report includes 11 possible instances of obstruction of justice investigated, and the members of Congress found that Mueller concluded Congress may apply the obstruction laws to the president's corruption exercise of power of office. The House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler accused Barr of protecting President Trump and of ignoring key findings, saying that Mueller's report outlines disturbing evidence that Trump engaged in obstruction of justice and other misconducts. Democratic presidential candidates are calling on Mueller to testify before Congress and are demanding that the full unredacted report to be released to the public. The World Trade Organization ruled in favor of the U.S. that claimed China's use of tariff-rate quotas for rice, wheat, and corn limited market access for American grain exports. The WTO found China had not been transparent, predictable, or fair in managing the tariff-rate quotas on U.S. grain exports, as the import tax was higher on U.S. grain shipments that exceeded the quota. The case, started by the Obama administration, marks the second U.S. victory over China this year. In February, the WTO ruled that China unfairly subsidized its grain producers. A magnitude 6.1 earthquake struck Taiwan's coastal city of Hualien on Thursday, injuring 17 people. According to Taiwanese weather authorities, the quake, which hit at a depth of 19 kilometers, shook the entire island, including its capital, Taipei. Hundreds of people were evacuated from schools and buildings, with concrete walls crumbling down. More than 100 people were killed in an earthquake in the island's south back in 2016, and a 7.6 magnitude quake took more than 2,000 lives in 1999. Rome's Holy Stairs, which Catholics believe were climbed by Jesus in Jerusalem, have been restored for the first time in nearly 3 centuries. The 28 marble stairs, that being covered by a protective wooden casing, will remain bare for people to see until June. The stairs, also known as the Scala Sancta, were brought to Rome in 326 AD by Saint Helen, the mother of Roman Emperor Constantine. It was encased in 1723, and the restorers found coins, photos, rosaries, and small handwritten notes with prayers left over the years. Now that it is open for worshippers, crowds of people have lined up to hobble up the steps.
South Korea's producer prices rose for the second consecutive month in March, mainly due to an increase in international oil prices, according to the Bank of Korea on Friday. The production price index, a barometer of future consumer inflation, edged up 0.3% on month in March. The central bank attributed the rise to an increase in prices of petroleum and coal products. This comes after prices of Dubai crude, Korea's benchmark, rose by 3.6% during the same period. South Korean director Bong Joon-ho's film Parasite has been selected for the 2019 competition of the Cannes Film Festival. The festival announced the 19-film lineup for the 2019 competition on Thursday. Bong made his debut for Cannes' Palme d'Or in 2017 with his last film Okja. Parasite is a thriller about a family that infiltrates another, and Song Kang-ho plays the main character, collaborating with Bong for the 4th time following The Host and Snowpiercer. The 72nd Cannes Film Festival runs from May 14th to the 25th. A special exhibition is being held in Seoul that shows the almost century-long history of Disney characters, right from the classic Mickey Mouse cartoons to more recent works like Wreck-It Ralph and Frozen. Lee Min-sun tells us more.
Mickey Mouse awaits fans and visitors at this special Disney exhibition in Seoul. Some original clips of Steamboat Willie, the cartoon from 1928 that gave birth to the world-famous mouse, are also on display. Characters and works created by the Disney studio are being shown at Seoul's Dongdaemun Design Plaza. The exhibition shows some 500 art pieces, including original drawings and concept art that hasn't been seen by the public before. Visitors can take a look at how the characters in the drawings were brought to life and the efforts of the Disney creators to bring the animation closer to reality.
I hope that the Korean viewers of the exhibition really feel connected to the stories, because animation really is a universal art form, and the stories that Disney has told really has crossed all generations.
This year is an especially big year for Disney fans, as some Disney classics, including The Lion King, are being made into live-action films. And some of the artwork provides hints of what could happen in the highly anticipated animation Frozen 2, scheduled to be released at the end of this year. The special exhibition will run through August 18, giving visitors the chance to look back at their personal memories with the well-loved Disney characters. 이민선, Arirang News.
Now, there's a famous Disney movie called Fantasia, but we're going to talk about a different Fantasia now. Ice Fantasia 2019. It's a figure skating gala exhibition featuring the world's top skaters. And it kicks off Friday night here in Seoul, and one of Korea's biggest skating stars is ready to dazzle crowds. Let's take a look at what he had to say.
About my special move, I have prepared a new program in the second part of the show, Boy with a Star, a collaboration with Hyuga boyband VIX. I think it'll give the audience something to look forward to.
Ice Fantasia 2019 will feature a number of world-famous skaters, including the gold medalists from last year's Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. For the 2-hour-long program, skaters will dance to a variety of music as well. The gala exhibition will run through Sunday at the Mokdong Ice Rink in eastern Seoul. Time now for our Life and Info segment, where we focus on information that's hopefully useful for your everyday life. Now, we are at the peak of spring here in South Korea. Flowers are in full bloom and generally the weather is really nice. But for those who suffer from hay fever, it can be one of the most uncomfortable times of the year. I'm glad to say we have our Oh Soo-young in the studio to talk about what causes springtime allergies and how to deal with the symptoms. So, Soo-young, I hear that today's issue is one that's extremely personal to you.
That's right, Mark. I'm among the growing number of South Koreans who suffer from hay fever. Around 17% of South Korea's adult population with allergies. That's according to the country's weather agency. I've been suffering from hay fever since I was about 10, and it always comes in spring around this time. There are around 3 periods during the year when you get hay fever, and if you're affected in spring, it means you're allergic to pollen from trees. In summer, it's pollen that's released by grass, and if you get symptoms around early fall, then the pollen comes from weeds.
Well, I think I must be lucky because I've never suffered from hay fever in my life, but I've heard that it is horrible. My grandparents used to get it really terribly. But tell us more about how exactly pollen triggers this allergic reaction in a certain number of people.
Right, well, basically, once the pollen enters your system, either through your nose or when it makes contact with your eyes, then it basically triggers your immune system, more specifically the mast cell, which releases a very strong chemical called histamine, which causes swelling of blood vessels, itchy eyes, a runny nose, and lots of sneezing. And for more severe cases of hay fever, the symptoms can be much worse, leading to headaches, earaches, excessive tiredness, and worsening of asthma. So think of it like this: it's basically your body fighting to, defend it from foreign substances. In this case, it's pollen, which is actually quite harmless. So, yes, it's an overreaction.
Right. Well, it's good to know that there's medication out there for that, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment's time. But so this happens only in certain seasons. Spring is one of those seasons, and here in Korea we've had some really warm weather recently, so spring has come earlier than normal. So it's safe to assume then that this is really not a good time for hay fever sufferers.
Right, you're absolutely right. A professor I spoke to at Hanyang University Seoul Hospital, he said that the changes in the weather, the warming of the planet, can actually affect hay fever and make the period of suffering, should we say, much longer.
As temperatures rise, trees and plants grow stronger and flowers blossom earlier too, so the period of exposure to pollen gets longer. So recently, we've seen a growing number of patients suffering from hay fever.
So, Soo-young, those of our viewers like you who get hay fever in the spring, what kind of trees should they try to avoid if possible?
Well, researchers say there are about 13 types of trees on the Korean peninsula that you should try and actively avoid because they release allergy-causing pollens.
Yeah.
And among those, the worst offenders would be oak trees, which make up about 1/3 of the country's greenery. The pollen from oak trees starts to spread from the end of February, and the amount of pollen peaks between April and May. Pine trees and alder trees also release pollen that triggers hay fever. Ginkgo trees were on the list too, so it's not just the pungent smell that you need to look out for.
Yeah.
And you can actually check whether pollen levels are high in your own city or province on the link provided here, as well as a forecast of the next 2 days. And the stronger the colour, the higher the pollen count.
Well, it's good to know that there's help out there for people who suffer from hay fever. I do know that it's very uncomfortable indeed. What are some of the ways sufferers can go about alleviating their symptoms, because you cannot live your life just avoiding trees all the time?
Right, well, there's some over-the-counter medication that could help reduce the symptoms. So oral drugs that contain antihistamine suppress your allergic reaction to pollen. I take it myself and find it very effective.
Doesn't that make you very sleepy though?
It does, it does. It makes you drowsy, so you should refrain from driving, actually, if you take it. And you should also be cautious if you're pregnant or taking other medication.
So read the back of the label carefully.
Exactly, that's vital. Yes, and there are also nasal sprays and eye drops that you could use.
Yeah.
And if your symptoms are extremely severe, then you should really consider immunotherapy, which involves exposing increasing doses of pollen to your body so that it builds up some immunity there. But I would say that the best course of action is to consult a doctor to find out exactly what type of tree pollen you're allergic to and map out a treatment plan that works best for you.
So, for example, if you don't have any medicine at home to treat your hay fever, are there any other ways about trying to lessen your symptoms somewhat?
Well, there are some guidelines that health professionals have given. They've recommended a couple of measures, such as avoid going out between 5 to 10 a.m. That's when pollen counts are at their highest, and you should take medicine if you have it about half an hour before you go outdoors. Doctors also advise you wear sunglasses and a mask, which could look a bit creepy at 5 a.m. And also add a dab of Vaseline inside your nostrils to trap the pollen before it gets further into your system.
Have you tried that?
I actually haven't.
Maybe you should.
Maybe I should. Well, right, and once you've been out, if you go home, once you go indoors, you should wash your face with soap.
Yeah.
I've personally found this very helpful with itchy eyes. This measure I haven't tried either, putting a hot towel over your head to sort of steam your eyes, or some warm tea bags over your eyes to soothe the symptoms. And also adjusting your diet could really help. There are some foods you should actively avoid as they can trigger allergy causing reactions. Yeah. And this list mostly includes fermented and aged foods like kimchi, cheese, yeast-based foods, as well as beverages. So that means you really shouldn't drink alcohol. You also want to avoid sweet or savory foods, anything really with preservatives or flavoring. And some bad news for vegans and brunch-loving hipsters, avocados are also on the list. So if you suffer from hay fever, then you should really hold yourself back from those fancy smashed avocado toasts.
Yeah, I've never been a massive fan of avocado, so it shouldn't bother me too much, refraining from eating avocado. But I hear there's another culprit that you should avoid if you possibly can as well, and that's almond milk. Isn't that right?
Yes, that's right. Soy-based products are also off the list, so no more soy lattes for our hipsters.
Right.
So more bad news. Instead, you should really aim to have fresh, unprocessed foods. Experts recommend tomatoes, potatoes, broccoli, and oily fish like salmon or mackerel.
Okay, so the hipsters are out of luck if they have hay fever then, it seems, and I do look forward to seeing you in the office with some Vaseline up your nose,
and
dripping,
a mask.
dripping out of your nostrils. But I think, yeah, very good ideas, very good guidelines to follow. Watch what you eat, take medication where necessary, but keep in mind that there are these at-home remedies you can use as well, right?
Yes, and they work for other allergies as well, because basically it triggers the same chemical reaction.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we hope your symptoms don't get any worse and we move into summer so you can don't have to endure this hay fever issue too much. Soo-young, thank you very much for your reporting today.
Thank you for having me.
Good morning. Those of us in the western regions will need to keep an eye on the dust levels. Ultrafine dust levels could go high, but should have improved air conditions by the afternoon. Temperature-wise, while it was cloudy and cool day in the upper parts, southern regions had highs in the upper 20s for the last 2 days. But we'll notice a 10 to 15 degrees temperatures drop today, so dress accordingly. For a closer look at today's daily highs, Seoul will get up to 18 degrees, Gyeongju topping out at 14 degrees. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all we have for now on this Friday morning here in Seoul. Stay tuned to Arirang TV. We'll have our next newscast at noon Korea time. So until then, goodbye. Daily news you need to know.
Breathing life into stories.
The program will be difficult to do.
Arirang News.
Arirang News leading the charge.
Ground cities are during the day and night. Low risks are Brexit.
Taxi drivers. Leading global news, gaining spotlight of the world.
인터넷을 좀 더 안전하게 만드는 데 기여하고 싶다. 그런 사람이 되고 싶습니다.